Hi. Ow. Ow. Why is it getting darker? Stop getting darker. I need you to be lighter, actually. Please. That's not helping at all. I hate technology. um, Hi. It's me. And past me. Or future me. Whichever one you choose to believe. Say hi to past me or future me.
There, that's a tiny bit better.
Slay. There's something. Oh no. So I get canker sores. My coworker has been talking this week about how she got a canker sore. And I was like, oh, that sucks. I'm now getting a canker sore. Thanks, Becky. I hate everything. Start over. Without further ado, I'm here to talk through writing. But also, I might start crocheting halfway through this because I decide I want to. This really is about creating. And just because you do one form of creating and you stop for a little bit doesn't mean you've stopped being the other thing that you are. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people have this all or nothing mindset where if I'm not writing, I'm not a writer. Maybe not everyone, maybe not a majority even, but there's a part of people that I know think that, and that's not true. And I've barely written for the past 3 months. I am still a writer. I'm still trying to become an author. It's just not all of my focus is going into that, and that's okay. Without further ado, I'm too far. No! How could this be? There's something from Instagram called the Authorgram Challenge 2025 from author Donna Marie Therese. I think that's how you say her name. If I remember, I'll link her in the description, but I might not. And I can hear you asking, Vel, it's no longer 2025. Why are you using a 2025 template? And let me tell you, YouTube is now basically my only social media. I hate Instagram. I hate Facebook. I hate X. Kara's okay, I just forget to check it. Because I turned all my notifications off too. So, I hate social media. And here I am. Wanting to be a content creator. Funny. I'm going to be talking through these. And then I'm also going to talk about the stuff I've been doing in January. That isn't writing. In what genres do you write? I basically write, well, in an official, I want to be an author capacity. I'm currently writing an LGBT dark fantasy that has a romance subplot, although it's pretty important, but I don't want to call it a romantasy. In a fanfiction capacity, I have tried writing everything. It usually has a romance subplot. I think all of my fanfiction, no. All the fanfiction, basically, that I have solo authored has a romance subplot. I love horror elements, so even if it's not a horror project I'm working on, I usually have some horror element in there. My main fanfictions are kind of sci-fi, especially because I do a lot of clans. Although my clances aren't really sci-fi that are out. Romance subplot, I'll basically write anything else on top of that, and it's even better if it's like a horrible, not horrible, but like makes you feel terrible main genre with the romance subgenre. That's my favorite combination. What tense do you prefer and what POV? I write past tense, third person, and if you want to get nitpicky about it, it's not omniscient. Like, I think that's the word I want. It's not omniscient. It's limited to the POV character. in terms of what the narrator's saying. Plotter, pantser, or plantser? I think that I'm a plantser that's a bit heavy on plotting. I used to try to write without an outline, and I never finished jack shit. But when I sat down for my debut novel, I had an outline. It wasn't super detailed everywhere, but it was an outline that pointed me in the right direction. And so I've realized I need an outline, but I also don't hold the outline to what it is there. If I decide halfway through that I want to change something, I'm not against changing something. And there are points where, like in my edits right now, I'm writing 2 versions of the last 2 chapters because I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know what ending I want. So there are some things where I'm happy to veer off what I've done, but I would say I'm a plot-answer, to put more emphasis on plotter. That's fucking stupid. No one call me that. Forget this happened. Self-pub, traditional publishing, or yet to publish? Yet to publish, but I will be doing self-publishing. I would love to make writing a source of income, but above all else, I want it to be enjoyable. And if I want to keep it a hobby, I want to be able to say, okay, this is a hobby now. And I feel like that might be a bit harder in traditional publishing, especially since going into my writing, this series has to be a trilogy. There's no way to cut it, or there's no way to slice it so that this first book can be by itself. And that's also really hard to break into traditional publishing with. And I think there's just a lot to be said right now about indie things, like indie spaces. I think there is so much to be explored in indie publishing, indie movie making, indie games, especially since everything is kind of becoming corporatized in entertainment and becoming about shareholders and how much money are you making and all this stuff. That I think indie spaces are where you can keep the passion. And sure, it's going to be a small team and it's going to take a while to get it out because it's a small team and you want it to be good. But those things are so important to a project that I never liked the idea of the grind for traditional publishing. And now that I say it, I think that's why I don't want to go to grad school and become a researcher like I thought I wanted to, because there's a grind to get grants. So it's kind of the same, not quite the same, but kind of the same vibe of you have to grind to get this thing to even do the thing you want to do. And I don't like that. So I think I'm realizing right now that that's kind of related. When did you start writing? Boy, howdy. And the next question is, what was the first story you ever wrote? So I will put those together. I first started writing, and you can judge me if you want. The first thing I wrote was literally, I took the first book of Cat Warriors and I plugged my self-insert into it. But if we're gonna talk about a story that I actually wrote myself, I had to be 13 to 15 and I was doing a Danganronpa self-insert. I had it on a flash drive and the flash drive, I guess, didn't eject properly once and it deleted over 100 pages of this fanfic, which, looking back, I'm really glad that happened, because it was shit and I don't want to have to deal with what it was. There was also a lot of me trying to process shit in there because, as I said, I'm a child of divorced parents and there's a lot of shit there, probably. At the time, I was so frustrated because that was the longest I had ever written a thing for fun, and so I rage quit writing until I was a junior in high school and I took a creative writing class. And I have been writing basically ever since then. I did quit for about probably 6 months to a year. but I've been writing almost not nonstop, but pretty consistently since then. What writers have inspired you the most? So, Stephen King. I love horror, so that one's easy. I've probably, out of all the authors that I've read multiple books of, he's probably the one I've read the most, other than maybe Suzanne Collins in terms of number of books, but she's not very influential on my writing. I would say Stephen King is more influential. I write long chapters. I like mind-bending horror. I'm not sure I'm capturing it well, but I like it. In terms of non-book writers, which is gonna sound interesting compared to what I just said, Lin-Manuel Miranda for Hamilton, because I love the way that Hamilton is, or Lin-Manuel Miranda in Hamilton, is able to carry themes throughout the music so well. You can hear the chords carrying through, and the lyrics will carry through, and the themes of the words will carry through. So even if it's not the same words, it's still relating to the same thing that you can easily, once you know it, go like, those are related. Even though I'm clearly not writing a musical here, I'm writing it, maybe not clearly, I'm not writing a musical here. It's very cool to see how those things can connect over a story, and it's been something that I think about as I read through my writing. I'm trying to think more of like, how can I make this metaphor context relevant? How can I make it book relevant? I'm sure a lot of people do it well, but because I've heard the Hamilton soundtrack so much, it's easy for me to look at it and be like, it's here, and I want to figure out how to do that. Do you schedule writing sessions or wing it? I don't schedule them rigidly. I have ADHD, and time blocking has never, ever, 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 ever worked for me. I know two things about myself. I know that starting is the hardest part, so I do set myself a time minimum. These days it's 30 minutes. I want to write for 30 minutes is what I say, and I have to sit down and start it and start my timer. And secondly, I am able to write, or more easily able to start writing before lunch. There are some days where it's just not happening, and that's okay. So I'm not gonna plug that in my calendar and then look at it on my calendar later that day and be like, shit, I missed this. I can't believe it. And then the whole time block thing's ruined, and that's why time blocking doesn't work for me. So, short answer, no. But I do have guidelines for myself for when I should write. Computer, typewriter, or write by hand, and where do you write? I wish I had a typewriter, but I don't. And I'm probably not gonna have the money for a typewriter for a long time because, job stuff. I write on my computer. I don't mind by hand as much. I am doing morning pages, so I've gotten more used to writing by hand, but with the length of my books and the fact I like longer chapters, it doesn't make much logistical sense to write by hand, I don't think, or draft by hand. I have set up my computer so it sounds like a typewriter because the clickies are a good incentive for ADHD folks sometimes, depending on the individual. I kind of shortcut my way to a typewriter in aesthetic. Where do I write? It depends on the day. Work days, I write on my laptop at work. I don't want to install Scrivener on the work computer, so I just bring my laptop and I sit at a little side table I have and I write, because I'm bougie enough to have a side table at work for some reason. I think it's more a storage thing than me being bougie. But at home, I sometimes will write on that laptop, or I'll write on my big computer, which I've rearranged recently, and it's interesting, but I think I like it. I don't mind writing in coffee shops, and I have thought about doing that again soon. I used to do that in college when Anne Foster and I were roommates. Anne Foster is great. If you've not checked out her self-published book already, what the fuck are you doing? Do you like supernatural horror with romance subplots? Because if you do... So I would like to do that again because the background noise is nice and the change of environment can be really helpful. What's your biggest writing struggle? Holy cow. Editing. Being too hard on my stuff also, I think, because I try not to be perfectionistic about it because there is no such thing, but it also just takes me 5 ever to get through it because I want it to be really good. In terms of actual like writing skills, I would say that my biggest writing struggle skill-wise in writing as a craft would probably be world building. I'm not going to say I have 0 world building skill, but it is definitely hard for me. Editor Vel here. I wanted to mention something that I didn't mention in the, I'm pointing over at my laptop, in the original recording of this. Because I talked about how I don't like learning history, and that's part of why I struggle with world building, which is partially true, but I also, it's because most of my experience is fanfic, where there is some establishing things you have to do depending on the AU, but you don't actually build it from the ground up. So I just simply haven't had as much experience in it because I haven't needed to do that in order to write everything that I've written thus far outside of this book. So I just wanted to clarify that because I didn't explain that well, and I think it's an important thing to look at and think about, especially if you're going from like fanfic spaces into original work. So back to past Vel. What's your best or strongest writing skill? Writing dialogue. Writing dialogue is the one thing where when I'm writing, I'm like, I know what I'm doing 90% of the time. I'm proud of my dialogue. I think it's good. People can disagree with me, obviously, but I think I am good at getting into characters' heads enough to make distinguishable dialogue for main characters. Not always for side characters, but for main characters, absolutely. I think I am very good at that. And that's about my only writing skill that I think I have, so... That's the only one I got, but you know, it's fine. I only need one. Share a tip or advice for new writers. Ooh. I wish I had this idea when I was starting out. Not to take myself more seriously, but just so that I could actually get my foot in the door. Not to say that what I did didn't help me build skills, but it didn't get my foot in the door in this way, I guess. I don't know how else to say it. But above all else, I would say do not edit. Whether you want to do a draft 0 or a first draft, whatever you want to call it, do not edit your first draft as you go. Do not let yourself get stuck trying to make your first chapter the best thing you've ever read. My first draft of this debut novel, it was the first fiction story of a considerable length that I had finished for my own thing. Part of that was because I did not let myself edit. I started with the first half of chapter 1 being something I wrote at 2 years prior, and it was garbage. But I took it and I said, I'm starting from down here, and I went. And something about that, not letting yourself edit, helps you get through the draft. You cannot make your draft better until it is done and you know where you're going. My phone ran out of fucking storage, so I was interrupted and I don't know where I was. To go through your first draft, don't edit it. Do not edit it. If you edit it, you're screwed. Unless you have already finished a draft and you know that's your style, you will get trapped in an editing cycle if you go back. Because you'll go back to chapter 1 and go, this needs to be perfect. It will never get there. You will not do it. And on top of that, no matter what your outline says, you might want to go to like Miami in your book, and you end up in fucking Seattle, Washington. Your book will take on a mind of its own when you're writing it, and you need to know exactly what you have written for the end to make the beginning work. And I don't say that to make people think that they have to put in a shit ton of work to make a, before they can start making their thing good. But I will say the best thing I did for my debut novel is I partially did this because I thought it would be one book. But by the end of the second draft, I knew it would be 3 books. But the best thing I did for my debut novel and my debut trilogy and my debut series is write all of it all the way through, so I knew what the last chapter of the trilogy looks like, so that the first the prologue actually that I have added of the first book ties in well to the very end. If your series is going to be like 5 million books long, obviously you can't do this. And maybe you think you're starting with 2 books, and then by halfway through editing the first book, you realize you want a 3rd book. Like that, it's not always going to work out that way. But it testifies this point of, even if you work in 1 book, knowing your ending is going to make the entire rest of your book better. It's going to make all of it better once you know where it's going, even if you change where it's going. Because then, even if you change where it's going, you know how it could change. You know how it could physically look different because you have a physical thing to look at versus just what's in your head, and it's not concrete up there, and things change all the time and you don't even realize it just because that's how memory kind of works. So that is my biggest advice. My second piece of advice, if you can, find a support person. There is no way that I would have finished my first draft without Anne reading through it as I was writing it and going, that's cool, or I don't understand what you're saying. Like, feedback can be so good if you can find someone. If you can't, it's not the end of the world. You don't need it, but it can be a big help if you struggle with motivation and this is the first time you're sitting down to write a full draft and you don't really know where it's going. So those are my 2 things of advice. I guess I'm gonna be done now before my phone runs out of storage again. Take it away, past, future, Vel.
So, I made this video with the idea that I would do the Authorgram challenge part and then talk about what I did in January, mostly talking about a bag that I'm making. And then after I finished the Authorgram part of the video, which is actually the second part I recorded, I realized that I'm super close to finishing this bag. I say this bag as if I'm working on the bag. This is not the bag at all. I realized that I'd rather do a separate video talking about that. I think it would be more fun to just have a video focused on that instead of adding it in here. And then this video would also be super duper long, which wouldn't necessarily be a problem if I didn't have to edit all of it, and if it didn't take me 12 hours to edit things sometimes. It'll probably be the next one I do, because I'm really excited about the bag I'm making. I was going to do a gaming video next month, but I don't have any of that ready anyway, And I'm also debating whether I should make a separate gaming channel because the algorithm likes when all your videos are the same type of video rather than going back and forth between different types of videos. But also, who gives a shit about the algorithm? Because I don't. I'm clearly divided on this inside. For things that I did do in January that aren't bag related, if you wanted some extra tea, I read The Green Mile. I just finished that this past weekend, so I technically did it in February, but semantics. And it was fantastic. That is probably my favorite non-horror Stephen King book. And some people will claim it's horror. I don't think it's horror. The main character works on death row at a prison. So the horror is facing humanity itself, and we can debate if that's horror or if that's just how the world is, and people choose to ignore it. I tried wax sealing this month. Here's my little wax seal that I did. The shape of it anyway. Candlelight. It is technically Christmas themed, so I got it on sale. I did end up working more on my debut novel. I hit 18 hours since the start of the year last week. And this week I've been working on fan fiction, so I am getting back into writing. I think making a video where I'm like, I am a writer, even though I don't write all the time, I think that kind of manifested for my brain. And then she was like, you're right. We are a writer. What are we doing here? And I basically wrote all day yesterday, which was a super nice feeling, even if that meant I ate lunch at like 2:30 and it was basically chips and dip. I still ate, so I don't care if it's girl lunch or girl dinner. It's sustenance. Not that anyone was arguing that I can't have girl dinner. But if you were, how dare you? Oh, I gave a squeamish warning, and I won't talk about being freaked out about it or what freaked me out about it, but I went and donated blood for the first time for the Iron Lung blood drive. I also went and watched Iron Lung in a theater by myself. Not totally by myself, but I went by myself, which is the first time I've done that. Why is my house making noises? It's not even a house. I'm not a homeowner. That's the extra tea without it being the full thing of tea that we all thought you were getting. I'm almost done with the bag. I just need to finish the panel and then put it together. And then it might need an inside liner, but it may not because of the way I'm doing it. And then I can show it off next month or whenever I upload that video. Hopefully next month. I'm doing good on my social media schedule so far, even though the video you're watching is going to be late to me. It's not going to be late to you, right? I've gone a year without uploading a video, so in theory, compared to that, all my videos are early. I'm going to switch over to my bag, I think, and go to bed soon. So, not that you care. And you might be watching this at 10 a.m. and going, yeah, right. And you'd be right. I'm probably at work instead. Be kind to each other. Take care of yourselves. Drink water. Create something. Create anything. Even if it's easy creating. Do a color by number. And I will see you next time with my finished project that I'm really excited to show you. Hee hee.